Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wind Down Wednesday, episode 21. So I wanted to start tonight by just expressing my gratitude, saying thank you to those of you who were here last week, or maybe you've watched the video since last week's live show for my celebration of my 20th episode. And if you missed it, I played my new song that is coming out December 19th called You Are the Light. I had a wonderful time playing and performing that for you. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. And if you're interested in downloading that song, you can get it directly from my website, which is paulataylorenergy.com. And that is starting December 19th. And then you can also get it on any streaming platform. You can stream or download it. I was guided to pull a tarot card for tonight. When I was doing my prep for this, it just called to me. And I use this a lot with clients. I use it in my own life. If I feel like I'm looking for some intuitive guidance, the cards, it's interesting how accurate the cards are, how it always seems to be very germane to whatever it is I'm looking to discover or answer about myself or with clients. So the card that I pulled for tonight is this card, Balance. And oh yeah, you can see that pretty well. And I wrote down a couple of things about this card. So consciously letting go is the key to all wisdom. Only in complete relaxation will you realize what is real and what is illusory. And it gave me kind of a little tingle when I saw that, because it really relates to what I'm going to be talking about tonight, which is tension, and more specifically, patterns of tension. What is tension? We all hold so much in our bodies. It actually prevents us from flowing energetically and from living in the present moment. And it's interesting, we talk about this a lot on this show, and if you've watched it before, you've heard me say this, but the physical, the emotional, and the energetic are completely intertwined. And what I see is that energy is always the foundation of the physical and the emotional. So essentially, we're talking about energetic patterns that create physical tension, that feeling of tension in the body. And a lot of times this is related to emotional issues that we have not been able to resolve, or emotions that we're trying not to look at, that we don't want to see. So all of this stuff is so interrelated. It's really hard to separate things out. And that's part of the reason that I ended up going into this kind of holistic field that I'm in, through initially massage and then energy work and now coaching, is because everything is so connected. So if you're just looking at the physical, or you're just looking at the mental, or just looking at the emotional, or even just at the energetic, you're kind of missing the larger picture. And the interesting thing about energy is that it is the foundation. So if you address the energy, when you're addressing energetic issues, it starts to resolve, or at least bring to your awareness, so that you have the ability to resolve the physical and emotional issues. So I want to talk a little bit about different types of holding. I've used the term holding before. I've used the term stagnation before. And tonight I'm going to use the term armoring. And initially, this is kind of I was going to do a whole Wind Down Wednesday on armoring, and that may happen later. But when I got into it intuitively, it was more like we were going to talk about tension, and armoring is kind of one aspect of tension. So stagnation is basically stuckness, when something's not moving. And a lot of times stagnation is a reflection of emotions that we haven't even looked at. So if we can't see something, we can't move it through and out of our energetic field. So that's what stagnation is. Holding is when we're aware of something, but we can't let it go for whatever reason. Grief, there's a lot of holding around grief, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about grief. But I want to talk a little bit about armoring, because that's not a term that I've used before on Wind Down Wednesday. And essentially, I wrote this down. Armoring is preemptively reacting based on prior experience. And in massage, we talk about physical armoring. So when you're working on someone in a massage setting, they might tense up, and we call that armoring. So they're not quite ready to let go. They're afraid they're going to get hurt. That's and that's an emotional armoring as well. So I wanted to give a couple of examples of armoring, and I'm going to go into different parts of the body a little bit more. But the first thing that came to my mind in terms of emotional armoring for me is, and I've talked about this a little bit before, I'm an empath. I can pick up other people's emotions. And so I sometimes have a hard time walking into a large crowd because there's so many emotions, and it can feel like I'm getting pummeled. It can feel physically like I'm actually getting punched or kicked. And so preemptively, before I go into something like, say, even a concert, something that's fun but has a crowd of people, I tense up my pelvic floor. I pull up on my pelvic floor, and that's a fight or flight response. And we've talked a little bit about that. I'm not going to go into that much more tonight, but when you pull up on the pelvic floor, eventually you lose access to the lower part of your body. And we spend so much of our lives in that kind of fight, flight, or freeze mode that a lot of us are very tense in the pelvic floor and we don't even realize it. So if I don't even know that I'm doing it, how can I change that behavior? But that's a good example of armoring. I haven't even gotten into the situation yet, and I'm already making changes in my physical body, in my emotional body, because I'm anticipating, in this case, being hurt or being overwhelmed. We use a lot of physical armoring as well. That's the way this all came to me the other day. I was working out. I have a thing called a TRX, and it hangs from the ceiling. It's a strap, and you hold onto the strap in various positions, and you can do squats, and you can do pulls for your lats, and you can do bicep curls. You can do all sorts of exercises, but it all revolves around you kind of holding your weight. So as you get tired, you start to recruit other muscles. And what I tend to do, and I have to be really careful with the TRX, is that I tend to armor up in my neck to kind of help, my back's not quite getting there. So I do this with my neck, and then I end up with a bunch of neck tension. But as we're going to talk about more, like, there's a reason that I hold tension in my neck that's beyond the physical. I could be recruiting my bicep muscles more, or even my triceps, or there's a lot of different ways that you can hold tension in the body. And even if it's a physical act that's causing the tension, there's generally an emotional, energetic sort of reason that you hold tension in that area. And that's what I wanted to talk more about tonight, and that's what we're going to meditate on tonight. Patterns of tension can reveal underlying issues. And I'm going to go through the body kind of briefly and use some really broad generalizations. And as always, I will say, if this doesn't apply to you, then that is completely fine. Everyone's different. However, I have been working with people for almost 20 years now, dealing with energetic and physical holding and stagnation and armoring tension. And there are definitely patterns that many people share. And so that's what I'm going to kind of go through briefly tonight, because in our meditation, we're going to look at some areas in our own body that we're holding tension and develop some awareness so that we can hopefully release some of that tension. The first thing that came to my mind when I was doing this, I kind of intuitively wrote all this stuff down, and it's the shoulders and the upper back, which I feel like is where probably 99% of people would acknowledge that they're holding tension. But why are we holding tension here? And the word that came to me intuitively is burden. So carrying a burden. So this is where we carry all of our burdens. Anything that you have to deal with, things that you have to do, conversations you have to have that maybe you don't want to have. It's all of that stuff kind of piles up onto the shoulders and upper back. And eventually we're like Sisyphus, well, I guess he was pushing a stone, but we're carrying something on our back all the time because we've lost the ability to let that stuff go. And then the next thing that came into my mind was the neck. And the arms are kind of an extension of the neck when we're talking about these patterns of holding tension in the body. And the neck is all about flexibility. And as I just mentioned, I have a hard time in the TRX because I have a pattern of holding in the neck or of tension in the neck. And it's rigidity. So what happens is that I start to tense my neck up, and then the tension holds there, and then eventually I actually hurt myself because I'm so tense for a long period of time. And if I move my neck around, sometimes I'll be doing my exercise and I'll kind of move my neck around, then it keeps my neck from tensing up. It gives me flexibility in the neck. And I'm talking about physical flexibility, but I'm talking about mental and emotional flexibility here. Mental and emotional rigidity manifests a lot of times in the neck and kind of where the neck meets the shoulders. And when we're flowing, when we're flexible in life and we can kind of, easily adjust to changes, then we don't hold tension so much in that area. And again, that's an extension kind of into the shoulders and the arms as well. So the abdomen, a lot of people hold tons of tension in the abdomen, and my experience is there's a lot of worry that gets held in the abdomen. And of course, we've talked the very first episode, I believe, of Wind Down Wednesday, we talked about worry versus fear. So worry is kind of a type of fear, but worry and fear both tend to be held in the abdomen. And we tend to have a lot of holding in the abdomen. So a lot of times we're holding a lot of emotions. There's a lot of stagnation there. And sometimes we're not even aware that we're doing it. And then that could actually lead to digestive issues and other physical issues in the abdomen. So the legs and the hips, I have talked before about, I hold a lot of tension in my my quads, my outer thighs. And so your legs and your hips, your feet, this is your foundation. This is how safe you feel in life, how secure you feel in life. And it's also how well you flow in your life. So again, if you're just kind of having a hard time going with the flow, you're probably tensed up your pelvic floor. You've tensed up your lower body, your legs, your calves, everything is tense. And when we can release and relax and step into flow, then our lower body can really support us the way it's meant to, which is in movement, not in stagnation. And then the head and the jaw. So the head and the jaw, a lot of people, I have TMJD, and I hold a lot of tension, and I've gotten a lot better at that. But think about why, when you're clenching your jaw, a lot of times there's a lot of overthinking going on. So anywhere in the head and the jaw, and sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's worry. Again, these are not set in stone patterns. These are just patterns that I've noticed in other people over the years. But anything to do with the head and the jaw, a lot of times is somebody who is very in their head. They're thinking all the time. They have a hard time, quieting the mind. A lot of that tension gets held physically in the jaw and the head. The chest is an interesting area because sometimes the chest, the actual experience of something being held in the chest is felt in the back. I cannot tell you the number of people I've worked on over the years who come in and say, my back hurts, my back is so tense. And what's really going on is that their chest is really, really tense and tight, and their back is overstretched, and they feel the pain in their back. But what really needs to happen is that the chest needs to get opened up and stretched so that there's balance between the front and the back of the body. So in the chest is the center of hurt in the body, and hurt manifests in a lot of ways. For some people, hurt manifests as anger. And this again is where I mentioned grief very briefly. Grief is really held in the chest. And again, it can be held anywhere, but my experience of working people and in myself, working with people and also in myself, is that anything that's hurt us tends to kind of get stuck or experienced in the chest. And again, the physical feeling of this, you may feel like a tightness in your chest, especially if you're grieving, or sometimes when you're angry, you get that tightening up. But you may actually feel the physical symptoms in that kind of upper mid back area. And I wanted to briefly mention anxiety. And I don't know if I've talked about anxiety. I actually did a blog post about anxiety. Anxiety is a difficult emotion because it tends to bounce around. To me, the experience of anxiety is energy bouncing around in the body. So whereas something like grief might be like a heavy weight on the chest, or worry might feel like a knot in the belly, anxiety is kind of everywhere. It's bouncing around. It's that worry and fear in the belly, but it's also the overthinking in the head. And it's this bouncing feeling that I get in my own body and that I see in other people when they come in and they're very anxious. The energy is actually bouncing. And so it's a little harder to work with energy. That's one of the reasons I like chant, or it's harder to work with anxiety, the energy of anxiety. So that's one of the reasons I like chant. Chant is a really good way to just kind of go all the way down through the body and get that energy to settle. So if that is an emotion that comes up for you tonight, and if it is stored somewhere in the body, you work with it just like any other emotion, but be aware of the fact that it can be tricky because it can move and change on you, and other emotions don't do that quite as much. How do we get rid of this tension? First of all, I definitely want to say that this is a process, and I say that a lot, but especially with these patterns of tension, most of us, I've been holding tension in my legs since I was a kid. I remember having achiness and pain in my legs after a very emotional experience, like at a very young age. I'm talking like maybe 6 or 7. So, if you've been holding this pattern, if this pattern's been going on for 40 plus years in your life, you're not going to fix it like that. And that's something that happens sometimes when people come in for physical massage, is that they want you to fix them and they want to feel better right away. And the massage might help, but until you address that underlying energetic cause that's causing that holding pattern of tension in the body, the tension's just going to keep coming back. And that's why a lot of times people get frustrated with massage, because they think, oh, well, I'm not really changing. Nothing's really changing. And it's just like anything else in the spiritual world. No one else can fix you. You have to work on yourself. And I can hold space for you as a massage therapist, and I can bring awareness to your muscles and encourage you to breathe deeply and relax. But until we identify the underlying pattern that's causing that tension, the tension itself is never going to go away completely. It's always going to come back the next time you're confronted with the situation that brings that tension back up to you. So be gentle with yourself. I say that every week, but especially in this situation, do this meditation multiple times and give yourself time to notice the change. So tonight, you may not even feel any change, but it's a practice. And like any other practice, you'll get better as you go. And the tension will, like, I may completely relax tonight during this meditation because I've been practicing this for so long. That doesn't mean the tension won't come back. That doesn't mean I still don't have holding patterns to identify and work with. But I've been practicing this for long enough that my body starts to get memory. You actually get, I've talked about energy memory, but your muscles actually have memory. So after you learn to let go of these patterns, after you send love into your tension and you bring some softness into it, then the next time your body goes, oh, I remember this. I remember that I know how to relax these muscles, because our bodies actually forget how. We hold these patterns of tension for so long. The other night I was meditating in bed. I couldn't sleep. And so I was just doing some energy work on myself. And all of a sudden, all this tension released out of my hips and my legs. And I was like, I didn't even realize that was there, because I'm so used to carrying that tension in that area of my body that I had to get really present and really soften so that it would release. So I wrote down a couple last things I wanted to say before we start the meditation. And that is, how do we get rid of this tension, or how do we bring some relief, before it comes back and we kind of have to work with it again? And as always, awareness is the first step. We can't change something we can't see. We can't change something we're not aware of. So recognizing your pattern, your tension pattern, goes a long way to figuring out, first of all, what the underlying issue is. And that's why I went through some of that stuff, because you may have never thought about it this way before. You may just think, oh, my neck is tense all the time. And it never even occurred to you to think about, well, why is it my neck? Why is it my neck versus, my low back or whatever? And of course, there's physical components to this, whether you sit a lot, what position you're in for most of the day, how you sleep. But underlying all of that is this energetic pattern that once we can see it, then we can work to change it. And it's usually related to these different emotions that we're carrying around, or traumatic events that are affiliated with these kind of emotions that have caused these patterns of tension. So bringing love, Love is the easiest way to bring softness. Love is the opposite of fear, and tension is fear. Energetic stagnation, energetic holding, armoring, this is all fear. This is fear manifesting in our body. So if we can bring love into our field, our energetic field and our body, instantly we can soften that fear. And flexibility equals flow. So if we can bring physical flexibility, like if I can start moving my neck around, then the energy is going to flow back down into my body again, instead of being trapped up in my head like it is when I'm tense because I'm thinking, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do this. If I can let that go and bring some flexibility, not only do I have more flexibility in my thoughts, but it brings that release into the body. It brings that flow back into the body, because energy can't flow through stagnation. We have to release the stagnation for the energy to flow. And then the last thing I wrote down is that neutrality brings release of emotions. So that's a really interesting concept, and it just sort of came out of my pen while I was writing. And I'm definitely going to be thinking more about that. And I encourage you to do the same, because that's what we're always aiming for here in these meditations. We want to get into a neutral state. And that neutral observer state is what allows us to have the objectivity to forgive ourselves, to forgive other people, to bring love back into a situation. If you're still in your anger, you can't release your anger. You have to get out of your anger into a neutral space, look at the anger, and then that gives you the neutrality to figure out how to release that anger or whatever emotion it is. I just picked anger. So neutrality is what brings release. And that's interesting because, we tend to think of, like, let's say I just used anger as an example. So we think of anger as kind of a negative. So you would think the opposite of anger would be something really positive. The opposite of fear is love. But really, the opposite of fear is love, and love is neutral. Love is balanced. So we don't have to get from this super negative kind of state way into this, we're not going from anger to bliss or whatever. We're going from anger just to neutrality. And neutrality brings bliss, which is really interesting. And like I said, I'm going to think more about this, and there may end up being a blog post in this, because it's a really interesting idea that neutrality is what brings release, as opposed to some big expression of what we would think of as a positive emotion. You don't have to go there. You can do it in neutrality. And in fact, you're more effective in neutrality. And then you can access that love, and then you access the bliss, but it comes from that balance of neutrality. I'm excited to do this meditation because these topics usually come to me because it's something that I am working on personally in that week. And I've definitely been dealing with a lot of tension this week. And so I'm excited to join you and get into this meditation to release some of the tension. So get nice and comfortable as always. I encourage you to sit up if you don't want to fall asleep, but if your intuition is telling you to lie down, that's fine. Whatever feels appropriate is the right thing for you to do today. Whatever part of your body is on the ground, whether it's your feet or your bottom or your whole back, just kind of wiggle that area a little bit. Let yourself really feel that connection to the ground. Maybe you forgot that you even have feet. You might have been in your head all day, so come back into the body by moving your feet around a little bit or moving your bottom a little bit. And let's start, as we often do, with 3 deep breaths in through the nose, and let them out with a nice ha sound. So allowing yourself to breathe in again and sighing out with that audible ha. This vibrates the vagus nerve. It helps bring you into the parasympathetic nervous system. When we're in that fight or flight or freeze mode, it's impossible to relax. So the first thing we do when we want to release tension is allow ourselves to come into a state of relaxation, to enter that parasympathetic state. And we're going to start, as we usually do, scanning through the body from the head down to the feet. But tonight, I want you to pay particular attention as we go through the body to the areas where you're holding tension. And allow yourself to decide which area of tension you're going to focus on tonight, because I know there are more than one and maybe more than several. We're going to focus on the one area that really comes into your mind. And again, with any intuitive work, whatever comes to you the most strongly, or oftentimes whatever comes first, is what your intuition is guiding you to focus on. So pay attention as we come down through the body and decide where you're going to focus on, what area of tension, what pattern of holding you're going to focus on tonight. Allow the top of the head, just above the head here, the crown chakra, let that open gently and invite that divine energy, that golden light of unconditional love and joy and bliss and neutrality. Allow that to flow into the top of your head, scanning through your head and your scalp, into your face and jaw, noticing the areas of tension here if you're holding anything. Right now, allow yourself to open to any intuitive messages that come through about these patterns, any emotions that you realize maybe you've been holding on to or you didn't recognize until tonight. Allow that energy to flow into your neck. You can see me moving around a little bit. If you're called to do that, you can, but it's not necessary. Let that golden light, that flowing energy of the divine, to come into your neck, into your throat, into your upper back and shoulders. Again, noticing if these are areas of tension, of patterns of tension that are calling for your attention tonight. Continue to let this energy flow into your upper arms. Let it come down the upper arms and into your elbows. Let this energy flow into your forearms, to your wrists and hands. And then bring your awareness back into the chest and upper back. Let this beautiful divine light flow into your chest and upper back, and noticing as you go, as this energy comes down the torso to your mid back and your upper belly. Notice where you're holding, where these patterns of tension are calling for your love and attention tonight. Let that energy flow into the low belly and the lower back. And recognizing here that tension is not necessarily the same thing as pain. It can be discomfort. It can feel like a tightness. It's not necessarily outright pain, but it can be. Letting that energy flow into the hips and the pelvis now, really paying attention to where you're holding tension. Are you holding tension in the hips and the pelvis? Continuing into the upper thighs, let that energy flow down your thighs, your quadriceps, your hamstrings, that entire upper leg, getting bathed in this energy. Coming into the knees now. Noticing that you might even be holding tension in a joint. It might not be a muscle necessarily. Maybe your knee joint feels tight or painful or uncomfortable. letting this energy now flow into the legs, the shins and calves. Noticing if you're holding anything here, if there's any stagnation, any tension in the lower legs. And then allowing this beautiful golden light to flow into the ankles and the feet. We actually hold a lot of tension in our feet. Sometimes people don't realize that. And as you scan through the body, perhaps you already had a little light go off about the area you're going to focus your attention on tonight. If not, that's okay. Take a moment now to ask for intuitive guidance. Let your mind go to the area, to the tension pattern that you're going to work with tonight. And notice first what part of the body you're focusing on. Part of the body has drawn your attention, your awareness. Taking those deep cleansing breaths as you need to, as emotion comes up. You can use that audible ha or just sigh through the mouth if you need to. Allow some emotion to flow through to release. Ask yourself here now, what is the underlying issue for this pattern of tension in your body? What are you holding on to here? Maybe it's an emotion. Maybe it's an event, a traumatic event. Just let whatever comes to your mind here come through your intuition. You can ask for divine guidance here if nothing's coming directly to you, and then just wait. Be quiet and wait for an answer. And if it's an area of the body that I mentioned, and what's coming to you is not something I mentioned, go with what comes to you. We are all different, and even though we have generalized patterns that we sometimes share, your experience is unique to you. And really focus exactly on this area. So for example, I thought I was going to be focused on my neck, but the area that's calling my attention is a very specific pinpoint of where the neck meets the shoulders. So let yourself really look at the exact area that's calling for your attention. If it's your abdomen, notice where in your abdomen it is, or your chest, or your back. Let yourself get very precise here, open to precise information from your intuition, from this divine flow. And ask for guidance. Ask for a message here. If it's not coming to you, what is this about? Why am I holding here? Why is this stagnant? Am I armoring? What is this and why is it here? What is the underlying issue? And you may notice that as you recognize the issue, a little bit of the tension releases. And that may not happen, and that's okay. You can come back to this meditation and to this specific area of tension multiple times. You can also repeat this to release other areas of tension, other patterns of holding. But for tonight, continue to focus on this one area and allow yourself to open to information for the last few moments here before we move on. And invite any affirmations to come in here. We'll be stating those out loud later. Maybe as you're working with this area, realizing what the underlying issue is, you're coming up with an affirmation to send love to this region. Take a big breath, let it out with a sigh. And now we're going to bring love into this area. We're going to bring softness, neutrality, flexibility. You can use the imagery we've used before, where you actually hold this area in your hands, you hold this tension in your hands, and you view it as though it's something very precious to you, something that you love very much. Maybe it's your child or your pet, maybe it's an object that brings you great joy. Bring that feeling of joy, that feeling of love, of expansion into this area of tension now. Use your breath to draw the love, the softness into this area. And sigh it out. As you breathe out here, release the tension, release the fear. Release the underlying emotion, the underlying energy that's holding tension in this area of your body. Just let it go. And again, breathing in love, breathing in flexibility and neutrality and joy directly to this area. And then sighing out that underlying issue, that emotion, whatever you're ready to release tonight, let it go. And let's take 3 more deep breaths this way, drawing in that love and joy, that softness, sending the love that you have for something that's most precious in your life into this area of tension, and then sighing out that stagnation or holding or armoring. Recognizing in this area as you continue to breathe in love and breathe out your issue. Recognizing how safe you are in this moment, how safe you are in all moments, connected to divine energy, protected by divine love. Breathe that sense of safety and softness and joy into this area. And then sigh out that tension. Let it go. I've been called to share some toning tonight. So as I begin to make some tone, some noise, some beautiful music, hopefully, continue to breathe in this love, this divine energy to your tension, and continue to breathe out the tension, that underlying issue, that pattern. Let go of anything you can let go of tonight. And bring your affirmations in here. Whatever has come to you is right for you tonight. I encourage you to say it out loud if you can. Continue to say your affirmation through the rest of this evening and this week. Oh. Take another deep breath in through the nose. And this time, let it all go. Anything you can possibly release tonight, let it out. Send it back into universal energy to be recycled for the highest good. You are safe and capable of letting this go, of living in joy and flow, of allowing softness into your body and mind, into your emotional field. Say your affirmation out loud one last time here. Let your awareness soften now. Let it come back to your body as a whole. Noticing any shifts in how you feel physically or emotionally. If you're sensitive to how your energy moves, notice if there's any change. Do you feel more flowing here? You can repeat this meditation as many times as you like, and each time you'll notice something different, and each time your practice will deepen and you'll release a little bit more of that tension and step a little bit more into divine flow. If you'd like, you can gently allow that crown chakra to close now, or leave it open with the intention that you are open to the flow of divine energy for your highest good. Bringing your awareness back into the body, moving a little bit here if it feels good, moving your head and neck around, maybe rolling your shoulders a bit. You can rotate your wrists or shake your arms out a little bit, move your hips and your pelvis, maybe rotate, flex and point your feet a few times, crack your ankles, roll your ankles around if you feel like you'd like to do that. Just come back fully into the body here and affirm with me, I am fully present in my body. I am fully present and flowing in my body. I am joyously present and flowing in my body. Be gentle with yourself for the rest of this evening, for the rest of this week. Allow yourself to soften into situations that used to bring you fear. As you're ready, you can open your eyes. I'm just smiling. That was a really good one. I really enjoyed that. I hope that you did as well. I don't have anything left to say, so have a wonderful rest of your night and a wonderful rest of your week. And I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesday.